right, everybody. Welcome back to the Swing Society podcast. This week, I will be joined once again by Max Cooper, our producer on this endeavor. Our buddy Shaheen is down for the week, and we expect him back next week if everything goes right. But this week, I guess we can start out by talking about where we've been and where we're going. I got Max here with me, and he tours with me, so. The last few episodes have been shot in hotel rooms, and I'm finally back home in the office. So that's kind of nice. Wrapped up last week in Omaha and Des Moines. And Max, I think you would agree that after going through a very cold start to the year with a lot of rain, summer hit us in the face in those two places real fast.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And then we're going to Alaska, where it's
Mhm.
also going to be potentially cold and rainy. And then after that, we go to Australia, where it's wintertime, potentially cold and rainy. So it just never ends with us for the rain.
That's very true, but we got a taste of summer in both those cities, and mind you, it was warm and rainy when we did those
Yeah.
spots. It was pretty brutal. So, other than that, we had a great tour. Got everything in. A lot of happy golfers. I noticed that the follow up program is bustling, and that means a lot more work for Mr. Cooper and I, but makes me happy that many people enjoyed the school and wanted to stay active in it coming out of it. So we got a lot of work to do on that after we finish this
Uh,
podcast. But yeah, this week we're heading to Anchorage for Saturday and Sunday schools. If you are based in Anchorage, we do have a spot available in the school on Saturday. Sunday's completely sold out. Um, and then after that, we fly down to Tacoma for an event next Tuesday. So school's coming up fast in Anchorage and Tacoma. Then after that, we're home for about a week and a half, and we fly to Australia, then run through Asia, the Philippines, Korea, and Tokyo. So a lot of fun stops there. I have space available. We just opened a second school due to demand in Manila. So that'll be a good stop. But this week, we're going to answer some of your questions. So I know a lot of the golf scores ask questions. I know I got a few people off of my social media phone. We bundled it down. Max picked a few questions that he wanted to ask. These are going to be kind of a surprise to me. So, Mr. Cooper, you ready to start talking golf swing?
let's do it.
What you got for me, bud?
All right. So, first one, talking about hitting the brakes to create speed.
Hitting the brakes. So I'm guessing by hitting the brakes, we're talking about impact. And in the traditional sense, hitting the brakes would be, slowing down the body, or slowing down the arms so that the club head can release through impact. That's what most people think of when they talk about hitting the brakes. I actually had a interesting conversation with my old pal Tyler Kuntz a while back, and we were discussing hitting the brakes rotational instruction style. Generally, when you're thinking hitting the brakes, you're talking about the more vertical shouldered, um, vertical shaft player, but hitting the brakes with the shallow player generally means it's not really thinking about stopping the body to throw the hands. It's generally a change in direction of the club through rotation applied to the handle. So basically, the player feels the lead side getting up out of the way, turning that direction would be the correlation to hitting the brakes for a rotational player. But that would be my idea of hitting the brakes. What the point of that is, it's very important. It's, a point where you see a lot of vertical forces that are created from the ground, truly transferred over into the club head to create speed. So very important part of your swing. But that would be my thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Next one is about a grip change. And is that the best way to stop an open face slice?
Grip changed. That sounds like a simple question. Maybe back in 1990 when coaches used to walk around the driving range and say, "Yeah, let's get the grip stronger. It will fix your slice." That would be something there. But in this day and age, I mean, there's so many components to changing ball flight and start direction and curvature. It depends on the player. Some players are going to benefit more from adding flexion and transition. Some players already get if you're adding flexion, you generally see the shaft fall behind them because you're not putting that hard downward force onto the handle early. So, maybe for a steeper player, adding more flexion would be a huge benefit for the player. Player that already gets the club head behind the hand, just strengthening the grip. It's such a player dependent, fix that it's hard to say go with that one. But generally, strengthening of a grip will get the face to turn over more with whatever release pattern you have. But is that going to be to the benefit of the golf swing long term? That's player dependent.
Sure. I mean, it also gets into what their matchups are in their swing. It's like you said, deflection, if they're a little bit more shallow or they take it back and they need to get that face a little bit more square. But it could also be, is it a backswing issue that's causing them to slice the ball or something like that? You never really know what exactly it is until you look at it. And just assuming one thing before looking at the root cause is why a lot of golfers struggle.
Yeah.
So next one is, I've always had people tell me I spin out, but I see videos talking about rotation you post. What is the difference?
Rotation and spin out. Now, so spin out generally has to do with tilts and not managing tilts properly, letting the chest go before the lower body. When we're not sequencing things, we can get ourselves in a lot of trouble. I got my cat sitting here saying hello. She's missed me over the last 3.5 weeks. But sequencing, the way the body turns is something that's absolutely critical to getting the golf swing in a good position. So a spin out would be, generally chest first, generally not creating tilts. When you get in a position where you have the, lead side out race or the lead side go too quickly, when the chest just moves, lower body doesn't allow you to get the bends and the tilts to keep the club behind you. You spin out. It causes the club to come over the top. So there's a major difference in sequencing to creating the correct tilts and rotating versus just going around in a circle that I see out of players.
Absolutely. Next one. I think this is a very cool question to ask. How far can a quick fix take you?
How far can a quick fix take you? Depends on what the quick fix is. If we're strengthening a grip because the club face is open and the player has a whole bunch of other alignments that work well, right? You get the guy who turns, uses the ground, has a pretty neutral shaft pitch coming down, path is good, and the club face is open, ball slices out there. Fixing a quick grip change can take the guy from shooting or the gal from shooting 98 down to shooting 75 overnight. I've had that fix. It's one of my biggest improvements I've ever had leaving a golf school, Portland, Oregon, years ago. Wide open club face, slicing in the woods, 90-yard 9-irons, didn't work. I got the face under control. Everything else was already in line. That quick fix can be massive. Other changes, other quick fixes, they can maybe get a little improvement. Some might not see improvement at all. So not all quick fixes are created equal, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Next one. This one has to do with early extension. We obviously know there's a lot of golfers that struggle with early extension. But what do you think the best drill would be to fix early extension?
Early extension, that is a interesting topic there. You see a whole lot of coaches talking about the early extension drills, telling players to get in the gym. When you look at a golf swing, early extension is just extension happening too early. And early extension is generally a compensation for something in the golf swing, right? Steep shafted player, balance issues. So doing drills to fix early extension generally won't help a golf swing. Most people aren't early extending just for fun. They're doing it to save their pattern. So if we get in here and you do those drills, and let's say you're a steep shafted player and you fix your early extension, then you're just going to become a 40 handicap that you see slicing the golf ball into the net over the driving range all day, right? That's saving your golf swing. So first off, you have to figure out why the early extension is occurring. General rule of thumb, you will find the shaft is pretty steep or balance points just aren't aligned. We see that in golf schools all the time. You fix that, then you can start going after the early extension drills. If it doesn't fix, there's a lot of players that if you fix the root cause, the early extension just goes away on its own. I mean, you tour with me, you see the follow-up program, you see how often that occurs.
Yeah, we obviously have had a lot of players. This was the most players we've had so far do the follow-up program. And it's been a pretty common issue to see a lot of people have the early extension, but you always have to go back to the root cause. You can't just do a drill and say something's going to get fixed right away if you don't go and fix what's really wrong with it.
Yep.
So next one is, does pressuring down steepen the shaft?
Just pressuring down. So I'm guessing that's a who asked that one? I'm
Mike.
Curious.
Mike.
Say again.
Mike.
Okay. So that's a golf score there. I know exactly who we're talking about. So no, pressuring down in and of itself does not steepen the shaft. That was a conversation we had in a golf school in Martinsburg, and a player in question, pulled his hands down, right? So if you're going to pull your hands down and move down in transition, then, to create forces into the ground, torque, all that good stuff, the steepening of the shaft can definitely happen, right? That's a common issue. Now, if you move down into the ground, if you transition into the ground properly with the right tilts and you don't put an immediate downward force on the handle, right? Or you let your body create that downward force, that shaft can fall behind you all day. I do a talk about driver and how to find yourself in the slot every single time. And sitting down into the ground while leaving your chest up, not pulling your chest down in initial transition, like let the forward bend that needs to be there gradually come on, side bend gradually come on. All those tilts gradually happen as you engage the ground, create inflection with the lead leg. That will not steepen the shaft unless you put that force. So those are two separate components. Pulling down is what's causing the steep shaft in his case, not sitting down into the ground. And I feel that was just one thing he thought of, because it's actually looking pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm.
He posted in the group about his first endeavor into the 70s. I've worked with him a couple years, and we started in the 90s, and the goal this year was to break 80, and he popped it after 3 weeks. So yeah.
Absolutely. Next one is, someone asked, they don't seem to create any spin with my wedges, but I feel that I am adding plenty of loft. What am I missing?
That's probably the player's problem. If you're adding loft, I'm guessing that AOA, you look at, Mayo talks about it all the time about how players face are closing. That's face is shutting down through impact, right? Open to shut down, right? That's a new concept that is just starting to be explored in the short game realm, and it's kind of fascinating me, and I want to see more data on it. But I have a feeling if a player is thinking they're adding loft, they're probably not hitting down on it enough, right? You look at spin loft, difference between loft and AOA, you want to be down with loft added. So players think they're adding loft, but they're really just, getting in here and it pops up. I get that a lot. You see the lower spinning shot gets really difficult when you're adding loft, but changing your AOA, right? If you're trying to hit it higher, you still want a downward AOA. We talk about moving the ball up, still feeling yourself hitting down. We use the strike wedge in the golf schools, right? I have you out there with the strike wedge, changing, ball position to change players' AOA, but also changing the shaft dynamics to add more loft while we're still hitting down. That's, the key to spin is making sure you're getting down in the ground. That would be my guess from a question on a podcast. I'd have to see. Now there could be too much loft, and you could be hitting down too much, and you could be going over the spin loft mountain. That ball might just be rolling up the face. That's always a possibility. But in most cases, just, throwing out a guess, I would say that player is not hitting down enough on the ball.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, typically when you try and add loft to a club, you're just it's gonna go too high. It's not gonna get the correct compression. All those things can happen, and obviously that's why they're probably not spinning it enough.
Absolutely.
So, next one: what is the best drill to fix a backswing?
Oh, these questions you're throwing at me. What's the best drill to fix a backswing? It would all depend on the problem. If I'm throwing something out there real quick, I would say, getting in front of a mirror and watching and feeling your positions, freezers, whatever you're trying to fix. You could do blocking drills. Blocking drills are always fantastic. But that would be a very specific, player dependent question. You'd have to see what the player's doing. Some player taking their hand, rolling it, that's going to be a different fix than the player that just starts, setting the wrist too early, gets crossed up. They're if you look at the crossed up player at the top, there's so many different reasons a player's crossed up. Some of them fatal, some of them fine, that you can recover from well. There are a lot of backswing things. Shaheen and I were talking about it last week. A lot of backswing movements are, not, you don't even need to change them, right? Player shorter backswing, gets the club a little bit more laid off with a strong face. People would say, ugh, to that, but it can be highly functional. It's all player dependent on how they react. So first off, you have to determine, is it causing a negative movement in the golf swing? If it is, then you can go about fixing it. Then it would be where the problem is. Is it early? Is it late? But your easiest fixes are going to always be mirror work and blocking drills.
Next one. This one has to do with compensations in your swing. And someone asked, are the downswing compensations due to a bad backswing?
Downswing compensations due to a bad backswing. Could be. That's not a guarantee. I've seen perfect backswings and the player just puts a bad force on that handle in transition, and they're compensating out of the transition, but the backswing looks perfect. I've seen, backswings that look bad that flow beautifully into transition. It could be. A lot of players get in position where they have serious issues in their downswing due to setup. All these questions are great questions, but they all would be player dependent. You need a coach who understands all those issues, and you need someone that understands, and you need someone to look at your actual problems, right? I've seen players hit massive slices because their setup isn't right. I've seen players make absolutely ridiculous looking backswings and flush it and be +3 handicaps. There's a huge range of movements that can work together, right? The golf swing is fascinating to me in that regard because some things work, some things don't work. So, it could be. That's the best I can answer that.
Yeah. I mean, that's like you said, you nailed it. It's all dependent. The coach has to be able to identify what the good parts are, what the bad parts are. And like you said, you could have an absolute perfect backswing and then just suck in transition. And most people will be like, oh, it's because of your backswing. It's like if that's not perfect, then your transition's not going to be good. And obviously that's just not the case. So
I will actually, I mean, I'll expand on that. You start talking about compensations, right? Compensations are something that comes up all the time in our line of work, right? Not all compensations are created equal. There are compensations in tour player swings that work highly effectively for the player, right? They are elite with those compensations in it, So that gets into, you're just talking golf swing there. There's nothing that, in my opinion, that's not true. I'm not going to say that. You know, to throw it back to the earlier question, it's all player dependent, and how a player escapes from that, could either be good or bad. So I don't quite know where I was going with that thought, but that's where we're at.
yeah. Final question. How many hours do I need to be practicing to be an elite? I'm in ninth grade and shoot in the mid to high 70s in tournaments. I feel like I should probably be the one to answer this one the best.
You know what, Max? I'm going to let you give your feedback on it in a second, but I'm going to say once again, player dependent. I'll jump in after you. Go ahead.
I mean, if you're in high school right now, you have all the time. I mean, I say you have all the time in the world, but you have more time than, the average person does to go practice. At least when I was in high school, obviously I'd go to school in the morning and a little bit in the afternoon. And then after that, I go spend as much time as I could out at that golf course. I still remember the call, especially during summer. Summertime, you have all the time in the world to go practice. And the more practice, the better. There was a call. I remember I was dog sitting and you called me at 6 a.m. You said, why are you not out there practicing? And that stuck with me because that's how I got good pretty fast, was just by the work ethic and putting in the time and the hours. I would say, I mean, you could obviously practice a lot, but if your practice is not very concise and detailed to what you specifically need to be working on, then you could spend 10 hours out there and not get better whatsoever. And it's just, you got to make sure if you're going to put a lot of hours into it, you have to be very concise and execute everything that you need to be able to work on. Summertime, go practice in the morning for a couple hours, go play, practice a little bit after that, and just do that every day. I think that was, I mean, you know me. I was out there every summer in the Vegas heat, just grinding away doing that, and I loved it. It was fun, but there's no, like you said, it's very player dependent. If you have a lot of time, maximize as much time as you can to do that. If you only have a little bit of time, use it wisely and be very, very precise with what you want to do.
So I agree with all that wholeheartedly. Um, I don't think, I always push junior golfers to go out and practice, right? Get out there, practice, 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 practice. I think practice has to be motivated by the love of the game, right? And I think back to me going out. I loved hockey and golf growing up. You couldn't pull me away from the rink, and you couldn't pull me away from the golf course. I went to both of them every day when I was growing up because I loved it. Now, that was for the love of the game, right? I see a lot of these juniors, and they're like, well, I need to go out and practice because I'm supposed to practice. That's not the love of the game. And, if you're in love with the result, you're probably not going to make it very far in this game. If somebody is forcing you, there's a difference in forcing juniors, right? If you're taking your kid out and they're 7 years old and you're trying to get them involved in an activity and just want to sit there in their house all day, and you make them go play golf as a kid for an hour a week in a little clinic, that's probably not a bad thing for them, right? But if you force a kid out on the golf course and they don't want to be out there, that's not for the love of the game. That kid's not going to get better. That kid's not going to succeed. I have seen several players that have come through my academy that haven't cared at all, that had some natural talent. I think I'm a pretty good coach. Got good enough off of natural talent and coaching to make a college team, and then they just are over it. We just saw one of our players. I'll leave that name unnamed here. Just got a text message from that player a few weeks ago after the freshman year that they just don't care. They don't want to play golf anymore. And you can kind of see that when they're developing. A player like Max, he loved going out on that golf course all day growing up. So that's a big key.
I mean, taking your money was pretty fun, so I couldn't say no to that.
Yeah. I stomped you kids forever and ever, and then finally you found a way to start beating me, and you never looked back. There's always going to be that peak where you just bully these kids on the golf course, and then whoosh, you go downhill rapidly, and they start beating you. And then once they start beating you, they don't let you hear the end of it. But you got to remind them there are a few autographed golf balls in your house and in Nikki D's house and in Smersey's house.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
yeah, I'm sure
not.
you keep them on the wall as motivation. You used to, because I used to stomp on you. Yeah.
I don't have any of that. You're trying to boost your ego right now just by saying we wanted stuff like that, and that was never true. I know Nick probably has it. You're talking about Nick, not me, though.
I autographed plenty of golf balls for you when you got a stomping when you were 13, 14 years old.
That's all the Rochers. That's the Rochers. That's not me.
Nick probably still does have those golf balls, to be honest.
Absolutely, he does. He just moved, and I know that's just sitting on his nightstand. He just sees it every day before he goes to bed.
Nicky D, gotta love that kid. Anyway, so if that's all the questions, we'll wrap there. We few fun things going up pretty soon. Website's transitioning over to ChristopherHowardGolf.com. I brought a new leader on to kind of handle that stuff. A little bit of a rebrand there.
So I got booted.
Christopher Howard. Huh?
I got booted from my job doing that.
You didn't get booted from the job. I just decided to go get a marketing manager on board, But a few things changing. Rebrand, ChristopherHoward.com, ChristopherHowardGolf.com. And I think you'll see me on social media mostly as Christopher Howard Golf. Keep the handle C Howard Golf. Those are minor things. Off to Alaska with Mr. Cooper Thursday evening. We're teaching there Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday in Tacoma. Got to figure out what we can get ourselves into with the day off there on Friday. I'm looking forward to one day off. Then right after the school, we fly down to Seattle. So what do you want to do?
We're going to go do some cod fishing.
Cod fishing. I think it's salmon fishing up there, but
no, I know.
All right. Well, good stuff, Mr. Cooper. Thank you for joining me. And now you get to go edit this thing. Talk to you guys later.